What's going on, guys? Jake Peffer here. Welcome back to Jake's Cinema Room. I'm joined by my good friend, Mr. Mark Mistretta, and we are going to be talking about the latest movie in the MCU, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. We got to check out a screening of this the other night, and I think for the most part, we both had a pretty enjoyable time with this, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I really enjoyed this one.
This time around, we're following the Guardians without Gamora, as we saw at the end of Endgame. And if you watch the Christmas special, she was absent from that. A new villain emerges, an Adam Warlock, and he injures one of the group, Rocket Raccoon, and the rest of the team finds out that they can't actually save him. There's a mechanism inside of him that they need a pass key to get through to be able to save his life. So they have to travel to where he originated from, basically, and find this pass key to be able to save their friend and hopefully keep the Guardians as strong as ever. Now, as we all know, this is kind of the send-off for this group. Director James Gunn's already put that out there. Marvel's already put it out there, and pretty much everybody in the cast has already wrote their farewells on their social medias and stuff like that. So we basically know this is kind of the end, but is it a worthy end? Personally, I would say yes. Mark, how about you?
Yeah, I thought it was a great finale and send off for these characters, which I think is really rare for any series to really have an ending that is satisfying. But this one was definitely one of the best Marvel films I've seen in a while.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about like phase 4 being a little underwhelming, and even the start of phase 5 getting off to a disappointing start. Me personally, there hasn't been too many I didn't like, outside of maybe the Eternals. That was probably the only one I just didn't really enjoy myself overall. Even Ant-Man 3, while maybe not one of the better movies, I still had fun with it. But this is a movie I think possibly since Endgame is probably one of the best movies in the MCU. I might even put it above Spider-Man No Way Home if I had to be honest with myself, which that movie was fantastic and I enjoyed it for the most part. But this one just, I don't know, this movie hit me in a way that I didn't expect. It's an emotional roller coaster. It's action packed. But these characters I've always had a real soft spot for, going all the way back to the first movie. And I think just the way that James Gunn, the way he writes these characters and the way he builds his family, essentially, I think it all just really works well. And it was a pretty touching payoff for this group of characters. I definitely, think is a good way to kind of send them out.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it has the humor you'd expect from Guardians. And again, as you mentioned, the story that really sets it apart from the rest.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, everybody here is pretty much bringing it, as they have in pretty much any of the movies that they've done so far. Chris Pratt is great once again as Star-Lord. He's almost kind of bringing something different to the character this time around, because now that he doesn't have Gamora, that's one of his friends and in a sense his girlfriend that he's basically lost. While she does appear in the film, she has no memory of ever really meeting any of these people outside of their brief interactions at the end of Endgame. And it's interesting to kind of watch him struggle, with not being able to really let his feelings be heard by her. She just doesn't care. She ends up joining another group and kind of making that her family for the most part, and it's difficult for him to watch. And it's kind of interesting seeing his character arc throughout this movie, because it's very different than what we've seen in the first two movies.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think that is just a really good story point. Like, I mean, just imagine like the connection that you had with someone for years, and you're seeing that person, but it's not really them. They have no memory of it. Like that, it's a really powerful story.
Yeah, and I think they walk a pretty fine line between still, being able to get some good comedy out of not just that, but other moments throughout, but also playing to the emotional state of it as well. I think James Gunn's always been good about walking a good balance between those two, and here is no different. even though Peter Quill, I would say, is still kind of the main character here, most of this movie focuses around Rocket Raccoon. And it's interesting because he's actually kind of sidelined through a lot of the movie, because he gets injured so early on. His character's not really involved a whole lot, but part of this movie takes place in flashbacks where we get to learn how Rocket became, a talking raccoon. And a lot of it almost in some instances is kind of hard to watch because a lot of it involves animal cruelty and lab testing on different types of animals, because we have a different villain in this movie named the High Evolutionary, who basically wants to perfect the world. He wants to take the world and make it better. So he's trying to take all these animals and make them into better people, essentially, and create this whole new world where these new creatures can all live and cohabitate and live together and everything. And it's interesting because we haven't really seen a villain quite like this, where he's in it for himself, but he has a different motivation that we've typically seen from most villains, because most villains are usually, oh, this thing happened to me, I'm angry, now I want to take over the world. This guy, he just wants to make the world better, kind of like Thanos almost, but he wants to do it his own way. And it's an interesting thing to watch throughout the movie. So how did you feel about the rest of the cast? I mean, Star-Lord's great, Rocket Raccoon's great. Everybody else, I think, gets their own moments to shine, and I think that's what I like about James Gunn so much, is he gives enough to each character where they all get their moments to be funny, they all get their emotional moments, and they all get times to be badass and everything. And even adding in new characters to the team as well, I think they all get to do something pretty heroic throughout the movie.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to add to that. Absolutely. I mean, each of them definitely had their moment. And they all each had their storylines going for them that they were able to, again, come to that emotional aspect and absolutely hit that humor. It was just a great story.
Honestly, there's not a whole lot here I would say I was disappointed with. The only real thing that I was slightly disappointed with was the character of Adam Warlock. I think Will Poulter, who plays him, I think he does a good job as the character, but unfortunately, they don't really give the character a whole lot to do. He has a great opening scene where it's a big fight against the team, and it gets to kind of show off his powers and a little bit of what he can do. And I think that scene works really well. And then where his character ends, I think also works well too. But everything in the middle, it's just they're not really doing much with him. He's just kind of there. At times he's almost played up just like a joke. And to me, it just, for this character to be somewhat hyped up, and from my understanding, he's a pretty big character in the comic books, he just didn't really do a whole lot for me here. And hopefully this is maybe just a setup for future movies, whether that's Guardian movies or he appears in other stuff. Maybe we'll get to see more of him, but in this particular go around, it just didn't do it for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's even mentioned kind of in there. I don't know if it's even kind of a self joke in itself, but how he's pulled too early, essentially.
I guess they did what they could with him, but for a character that seems like he's pretty powerful, they just didn't really do a whole lot with him. So I kind of wish there would have been a little bit more there. But really, outside of that, I mean, I think everything else here works. There are some great action set pieces. It's pretty action packed throughout. You don't really feel the runtime, at least I didn't. For a movie to be 2.5 hours, I thought the pacing worked well. There's never really a dull moment. If there's nothing action packed going on, it's usually funny, or there's at least something going on that's kind of building the story up a little bit more. Did you have any other gripes or anything like that?
No, nothing that's coming to mind. I mean, yeah, I agree with what you've said. I mean, it was just all around entertaining. I was surprised to see one character in particular will be returning without mention of others. I'll add that.
Yeah, that was interesting. That kind of comes up, and so there are two post credit scenes, or excuse me, one mid credit, one after credit, where they do mention that one character in particular will be returning. No mention of the other ones. So yeah, that was a little interesting. It will be interesting to see where they take that particular character. So I'll definitely be on the lookout for that. But yeah, I mean, there's really not much else to say. I mean, this is just an all around great movie. I think this is seeing the MCU kind of get back into the swing of things. Even though, like I said, I enjoyed most of Phase 4, and even to a certain degree, I liked Ant-Man Quantumania. I think this is the MCU kind of getting its footing back and just putting out a really solid movie, even though it's the end of an era for certain characters. I think it did it in a way that leaves you happy. Like at the end of this movie, all I could do was really smile, because it's a good ending. These are great characters, and it's good to see them get sent off in a way that's touching, but at the same time, makes you happy.
Absolutely agree with that.
So the last time I had you on, we did not, normally I do a little rating, from 0 to 10, what we thought about the movie. On a scale of 0 to 10, what would you probably rate this?
Ooh, I would say I haven't really put a thought into rating, but I would definitely up there. I mean, 8, maybe 9. It's absolutely up there. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of right there. I might even go like a 9.5, because really outside of the Adam Warlock character, there wasn't much else that didn't work for me. So I think I'd go about a 9.5 out of 10. I'd go as far to say, not only is it for sure a top 10 MCU movie, it might even break into my top 5, honestly. Because this is definitely better than part 2. And it might be a little too early to say, but I might say this is better than the first Guardians. I don't know if you'd agree with that or not.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Like I said, just to have like a satisfying conclusion. I mentioned it earlier. It's just so rare to get, and I'm just really impressed with that.
Yeah, and this is arguably probably one of the best trilogies in the MCU, because this is, we've had Captain America's had 3 movies, Iron Man's had 3, Thor's had 4 at this point, and I would say this is arguably one of the best, just as far as consistency, because that first one is so good. It was so unexpected. A lot of people were very unfamiliar with these characters, myself included, and they won me over. And even though the second one is definitely a step down, I still really enjoy it. And it's got a lot going on there too. But this, to kind of come back and hit everything with such an emotional punch, and be almost as good, if not better than that first movie. This is without a doubt one of the best trilogies that we've seen in the Marvel universe, for sure.
Yeah. And I think that, like, to your point, I think that might be what even makes it better than the first. Is the first movie, of course, spending time introducing the characters to many and building up those characters, whereas this final film here, we really, we already know the characters, so at this point it's just having a good time with them from start to finish. So I think that definitely plays into the story of this third one perhaps being better than the first, is just being able to see the entirety of the film. You know what to expect, and you're really just enjoying it at that point throughout.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that, because you don't have to wade and all that origin story of who are these people. We got to set them up. This person does this, so on and so forth. So yeah, being that these characters are already established at this point and been in 3 or 4 other movies, it's nice to just jump right in, watch their story, and see it go all the way to the end. So I think that does bode well for this versus the first one, for sure. I think that's about it from us, guys. When you do get a chance to see Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, once it hits theaters Friday, May 5th, please let us know what you thought about it in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe to the channel for more reviews coming up in the near future. I'll leave all my links down below on where you can follow me and check out more of my reviews. And until next time, guys, we will catch y'all later.